Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks.
Looks like you've been missing a lot of work lately.
I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob.
What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny?
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year.
So what if I told you the secret to getting more done, to being happier in a shorter period of time, wasn't by adding more stuff, but it was by actually subtracting? Here's the thing. Scheduling your time off before you do anything else is not selfish, and we've been taught to think that way. In fact, if you don't do it, you are selfish. Here's 4 quick things that I'm going to cover with you right now. I'm going to give you 4 reasons that you actually have to do this, and if you don't, you're disappointing not just yourself, which you don't want to disappoint yourself. You're disappointing your friends, your family, and most importantly, the people you're trying to help, the people you're trying to serve. And number 2, I'm going to give you legit smoking gun evidence as to why this is going to work. Smoking gun, term coming from, I think, Perry Mason years ago. And then I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. And then I'm going to tell you what's going to happen if you don't. And then I'll tell you what's going to happen if you do. Number 1. You are not a unicorn. I'm not a unicorn, meaning that we think the more we add, the more we hustle, the more we grind, the more we're going to get done, the more success we'll have, the more people will love us, and the more mission-driven opportunities we'll have. But I have found out the hard way after 20 plus years of doing this. It doesn't work all the time. Grinding like that is idiotic, and listening to people who are hashtagging every bit of it is not helping. That is just folks that are trying to get more clicks, views, and into their funnel. Look, it would be like, and you've met these people who just work out nonstop. And look, and if you're working out once or twice a day and you found some balance, fantastic. But I have met the dude that is my age that is injured all the time. He goes to CrossFit multiple times a week, like in more than the days that exist, and he is always injured. He is not taking time off to let his body rest. You have to do that. Your body needs rest days in between workouts. Your muscle fiber is breaking down and it needs a chance to regrow. But that's just common sense. We understand that. Same as if I ate all the time without taking a break. My kids are now teenagers, and we got like normal genes. We're not skinny folk. We're not big, but we eat, it shows up. But there's always that one kid who eats nonstop, who just never seems to gain weight. That kid's a unicorn. Now, that kid also grows up, and I've seen what happens to him later. It's not pretty. For you, you can lie to yourself and others about, well, I just enjoy what I do so much. I'm just a mission-driven entrepreneur, and I'm constantly thinking about my clients. And I get this. And I've had people tell me, Charles, I had a client email me at 9 p.m. and it was just wonderful that they relied on me. Maybe, and we'll get into why you feel that way in a minute, but usually we tell that story enough till we try to believe it. I just had a potential client that I turned down come to me not that long ago, dude, that was bragging to me about how he worked 90-hour work weeks. A, I don't believe that. And B, come on, dude. You're not happy when you're telling me this. He's got a wife. He's got kids. And he's telling me, I just enjoy what I do so much. It's all I think about. I'm obsessed, and I'm constantly creating deals and investment opportunities. I don't think I want a 4-day work week, which is why he scheduled time to talk to me. I found out later because it really didn't enjoy the 90-hour grind. And I've kept up with him since. Things aren't going well. Don't be that person. Number 2, rest creates ideas. You are implementing the ideas you have now. And we have too many ideas, and we're trying to chase every single one of them. But that rest, that time off, actually gives you a chance to let your brain settle, empty the junk drawer, and then sort through what's left. Identify the priorities, and then put those into action. If you do not rest, if you don't take time off, if you don't do a little travel, if you don't enjoy whatever, a walk with the family, I don't care what you want to do, go hiking. But if you don't take that time off, it won't show up later, and you'll be in the weeds constantly, and you'll be tired and frustrated. Which leads to point number 3. If you don't create time off, you will create resentment. I mean, like a lot of it. When I say resentment, If you're in the first year, 2 or 3, and you're still building your mini empire, I got it. You got to keep hustling and grinding, blah, blah, blah. But if you're like me and you're 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you've reached some level of success without that time off, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to think this isn't really worth it. The reason that most people start a business, your why that we get so obsessed with is, hey, we want to help other people. We found a thing we're good at and other people pay us for it. Great. Secondarily, we want to create freedom. Time off is, in fact, freedom. It's the opportunity to do what we want, when we want, with who we want. And if you're not giving yourself that, you will start to resent the business you created. You'll resent the employees you have. You'll resent your poor clients who are the folks that are trying to get you to help them. I literally just had a dude. Oh, no. Well, I say the dude. I've had a couple of dudes, men, women that have went back to work recently. And I know times are tough and insert cliche here, but I'm working so hard, Charles, and it's just not worth it. And I would just rather go back to work and not feel the stress. And I get that. But in a lot of those cases, the people that are working so hard is kind of a it's a choice. They don't have to put in that kind of time. They just can't let go, which gives me to like point number 4. Why can't we let go? Why don't we schedule time off? A couple of reasons. Maybe our clients truly do need us, but more than anything, we have this need for significance. And I'm not the guy that can cover that. Tony Robbins does it way better than I do, and he's much taller. The need of significance is that we have built up in our mind that if we are not available, if we are not creating the next piece of brilliant content, doing your podcast or writing your book or whatever it is that the world will fall apart without us. And then we also have FOMO, fear of missing out. If I'm not there, what will possibly happen when I'm not available? Look, you're awesome. The world needs whatever you're doing, but I'm telling you, it's okay if you take a break. The world will not fall apart while you take your family to, let's say I'm here in Tennessee, to Gatlinburg or down to the beach, or if you take time off to go see mom and dad, or if you're fully present at your kid's next activity, as in put the laptop down when you're there watching the 3-year-olds play soccer. We always think that if we're not involved and if we're not in the middle of it, then it's not happening. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work that way. So let me give you some practical examples that I've run into and read about. I recently read great book, 10X is easier than 2X. The concept being that if we just try to double our efforts doing more by doing more, it won't work. Doing more by doing less is 10Xing. The guy that wrote the book, co-author Dr. Benjamin Hardy, in his 80s, still crushing everything, but he breaks his days down into focus days, free days, buffer days. Focus days are just what they sound like: head down, working, writing. The buffer days are kind of those in-between days where he's having to do some admin stuff that he hadn't figured out how to get rid of. And then there's those free days. This is what the point we're going to get into. He schedules 100 free days off every year at the beginning of the year. He does that so nobody else can steal that time. And he's not the only one. I mean, you've heard of Bill Gates and his Think Weeks. And I know that sounds, I don't know, maybe entitled or a little over the top to think that you could take off Think Weeks. But, you know, if you get to a certain point, taking off time helps later. Even I go to a mini mega church here in Middle Tennessee, Long Hollow, and the preacher, a rock star, takes off time. And we get guest preachers from time to time. And I know some people get frustrated with it. Well, he should be here. It's the Lord's work. He has seen so many other preachers burn out because they have the feeling of significance, the feeling of FOMO, the feeling that if I'm not doing God's work, it won't get done. It'll get done. If you don't take the time off, just like it says in many places of the Bible, you will get burned out. That's point number 1, or example number 1. And then second, think of it like a pay yourself first mentality. Often we don't have the money we want because we paid everybody else before we paid ourselves. Mike McCallum wrote an awesome book on pay yourself first. Instead of income minus expenses equals profit, it's you create the income, you take the profit out, and whatever's left is for expenses. Think about that as the example for the time off. Schedule what time off you need, and then everything else falls into the days that you have left. I promise you, you will be able to fit the important activities, not all of them, do more by doing less, into the days you have remaining. Give me a third little case study here. I'm about to have a guy on my podcast, Phil Palucha. I hope I'm saying his name right. Billionaires and Boxers. Brilliant guy, European, cool accent, lives in the Caribbean now. He has several things he's into. One of them, he is this amazing sports investment guy, does things at a high level I don't understand. And then he does also personal branding. He works 2 days a week, which I thought was a little self-indulgent. I said, Phil, how'd you get to 2 days a week? He said, I didn't have much of a choice. During the pandemic, he got COVID, almost died from it. And he developed this like chronic fatigue syndrome. He still deals with a little bit today. He said, I can't. He said, but that was, as terrible as it was the greatest gift, because then I learned it. I had to figure out what I could do in just 2 hours a day. And it clarified everything for him. And now he is light years more successful in his 2 or 3 days a week than we are with our 6 to 7. Last good point here, number 4, Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that whatever time frame we give ourselves to do a project, we'll use every bit of it. And I see this with, let's say, my kids on a homework project. 2 of them had to do a 1-pager. We used to have to do book reports, 3 to 5 pages of book reports. Now they do this thing called a 1-pager. They have to read a book and they have to describe in 1 page what the book was about, draw pictures, quotes, whatever. In both of them, they took their time, they read the book, but the 1-pager, they had all summer to do it. When do you think they did it? Like the day before it was due. What would I say in advance? I know the right parental thing would be, you got to just do it in advance. You have plenty of time, but our brains don't necessarily always work that way. It's why we procrastinate on purpose. Another great book, Rory Vaden. If you only give yourself a short period of time to do a significant task, you will find a way to get it done. The time off is there and available. Those are 4 great examples, 4 other things that show you that it's possible. Now, how do you actually do this for yourself? It's not complicated. First, I hope you're using an electronic calendar and you're actually sticking to it. If not, that's the pre-homework. Use a Google Calendar. Block off all of the weekends and all of the holidays for this upcoming year. Weekends, pretty simple stuff. And for a lot of my clients, they got 3-day weekends. Good for them. But there's holidays. You already know in advance. Don't try to overschedule everything. You're taking off 2 to 3 days at Christmas. Or 2 to 3 days at Thanksgiving. Maybe a full week at Christmas. You got New Year's. You got Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, which I always get mixed up. Schedule those off before you do anything else. And between the weekends and that, you're already well over 100 days. And then go ahead and schedule. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, block off vacation time. This will invigorate you and make you so happy. Luckily, I'm married to a quasi-travel agent. She's not a travel agent. She just thinks she is. Bless her sweetheart. Sarah loves to research this stuff to death. And for some people, hopefully you, if that excites you, go ahead and do that now. We just took a fabulous trip to Costa Rica. And again, it might sound self-indulgent, but I've gotten to a point where we can do that. I'm not asking if it's cool. We did it. Go ahead and block those off now. And if you're like me, you got kids and you got spring break, summer break, fall break, you got periods where you can do this. If you don't have kids yet, great. If you're an empty nester, great. If you're single, man, tell me some stories. But block those off now. Go ahead and decide now. Plan around the kids' events. Plan around the in-laws, the outlaws, or whoever. And yes, I know the best laid plans sometimes don't always pan out, but put it on the schedule. That will give you something to look forward to, if nothing else. And I love knowing that I got a vacation or some time off, even if you can't afford a vacation, right around the corner. That's number 2. Number 3, treat all of those blocks of time like they are doctor's appointments. I have made this point over and over, and I will remake it again and again and again. Had my both knees replaced. The surgeries leading up to that, the physical therapy, the post-surgery, the post-physical therapy, it was non-negotiable to start skipping stuff. I saw the people that decided to skip stuff because they were so busy, and they're in line probably for new knees again here in a few short years. Not me. Every time physical therapy was called, I was there. I didn't just get so busy checking email, text, having another pick your brain meeting that I couldn't go. That's what you have to do with your time off. If you do not treat that time off like it is the most important thing in the world, you'll give it up. Once you give it up, You'll go back to the grind. Once you go back to the grind, you'll be frustrated, resentful, and you won't be nearly as creative and you won't be your best self. Without that rest, you're showing up haggard. Lastly, number 4 here, time to set some boundaries. So what happens when we set weekends? Great example. But I had a client that had an emergency. What are you doing that they had an emergency? Seriously. I've got a lot of my clients, they are coaches, or they have digital agencies, or they're financial advisors, insurance agent. Insurance agent, if you're, and I had this with a client of mine, her house, she had a client that had a house burned down. That was an emergency. She needed to be available. Everybody else, you are not having an emergency. They might think they're having an emergency, and that's time for you to set up boundaries. And this is a whole podcast episode that I will do. Without boundaries, there is no respect, there is no value, and there is no appreciation. Same as if you got boundaries with your kids. My kids aren't allowed into the bathroom while I'm in there. They're not allowed into the bedroom at a certain point past, each evening. And they've got boundaries with me. I've got 2 teenage girls. I knock. Boy, I've had to learn that with hard. You got to knock before you roll in. Have boundaries. Block off all the weekends and holidays. That's 1, block off the family vacations. 3, treat them like doctor's appointments. And 4, set boundaries. I can promise you, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you don't do this, you will burn out and fail. There's a 7% failure rate in the first 5 years for us. There's like a 90% in the first 10 years. We can blame cash flow, passion, the economy, the competition, the government, but that's all kind of true. Most of it, though, is just burnout. And if you're burned out, you're not helping people. If you're not helping people, you're not doing the thing that you think you're probably meant to do. But if you do take time off, you're going to show up for your clients, for your family, for everybody, recharged. This is like getting a good night's sleep. You're going to be appreciative. You're going to fulfill your mission, and things are going to do what they need to do. These are my suggestions for you. And as always, I've got a website, yourcharlesalexander.com. I help people do this. I also, I've got my mission this year to do a certain number of free, no-cost calls with no call to action at the end, just to help people get over this. I can get some research out of it, so I can call that my service. Go to the site, schedule some time, let's have a conversation. Your next steps, do that. If you don't, bad things will happen. Schedule time off, and you're going to appreciate everything. Don't take off just yet. I've created a new program just for you, helping overworked entrepreneurs create their very own 4-day work week in 90 days or less. Look, if you'd rather spend more time with family, friends, traveling, exercising, having the time to do what you want instead of, putting out never-ending fires, tackling another to-do list, and checking email at 9 p.m., then go to my website, yourcharlesalexander.com. If you've created the income you want but don't have the time freedom you deserve, then this is for you. And as always, if you don't, an angel may actually